Log 3, H.
Man, who doesn't love the Nintendo Wii? Considered as one of the most innovative consoles of its time, Nintendo managed to sell well over 100 million of these puppies worldwide. Unlike Sony and Microsoft, who are focused on the core gaming audience,
Than you. Guaranteed I get more than you.
Nintendo took a rather unconventional approach, appealing to more of a casual audience that doesn't necessarily always play video games. The Wii was also home to a big online community that still plays it daily 18 years later. Since I've already covered the OG Xbox, I decided I'd do the same with the Nintendo Wii. So in today's video, I'll be exploring the Wii's ever-growing online community, from racing with people across the globe on Mario Kart to exploring a handful of some rather quirky Wii channels. This is Exploring the Wii's Online in 2024. But before we continue, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the following YouTube members for their continued support. The following members are Another Foxboy, JKASH_1, Canadian Jelly, Chrissy TM, Fruzilla, Mini Minter 17, and Herdy. Thank you guys so much, it is greatly appreciated. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if most people weren't aware that you could play a Nintendo Wii over the internet. Nintendo didn't exactly advertise it as a main selling point, rather treating it as an additional feature, similar to how Sony treated the PlayStation 2 online service. The Wii's online service included both the ability to play with others over the internet, an eShop where players could purchase and download games, to being able to order a pizza directly from the console. The Wi-Fi online service lasted from 2006 to May 20th, 2014, giving the service a lifespan of about 8 years. 10 days prior to its scheduled shutdown, a team emerged out of the woodwork by the name WIIMFC, with the goal of restoring the Wi-Fi online services once Nintendo pulls the plug. The announcement of the new service also included a tool where users could manually patch their games to work online after the May 20th shutdown, ensuring that the community is preserved for decades to come. Since then, the WIIMFC team has done a tremendous amount of work. They have successfully restored services to over 100 games and have added support to the Nintendo DS as well. Pretty cool if you ask me. I decided I'd go check out WIIMFC and revisit good old Mario Kart. Alright, right off the bat, Mario Kart Wii offers two modes to choose from, Versus and Battle. Versus is the bread and butter of the multiplayer mode. Up to 12 players duke it out against each other across the globe. No matter what time of day it is, you can almost guarantee that there will always be at least someone to play with. On the other hand, you have good old Battle mode. This is perfect for someone who's burnt out from racing and wants more of a simple yet competitive experience. Unfortunately, you don't seem to find many players in Battle anymore, which is a real shame. So you might be asking yourself, what's it like to play Mario Kart Wii in 2024? Well, for starters, it does a lot of things right. The controls are simple and easy for anyone to pick up and play. So much so that if you handed a controller to a chimpanzee, they would still be able to kick your ass at the game.
You got skills.
But my favorite part of Mario Kart Wii is in its sheer variety of tracks that you can play on. One minute you're driving for the tropical, sunshine-infused setting of Delphona Plaza. Then the next minute you're in Antarctica, slipping on ice, and trying to avoid those stupid-ass penguins from Mario 64. Every course has something distinct about it, making each playthrough a lot more memorable. You can tell the team poured a lot of love and passion into the game, something that's missing in a lot of modern AAA titles nowadays. Side note, but I've forgotten just how challenging this game was. I don't know if my hand-eye coordination has gotten in the past decade, but goddamn. Anyways, the community here is very active and plays it 24/7. This also means is that there is a skill gap, which some returning players might find off-putting. But honestly, who truly gives a if you win or lose? It's Mario Kart. Also, kudos to the WIIMFC team. Despite playing matches with people spread across the world, I experienced little to no lag or any noticeable latency for that matter. Mario Kart on the Wii is a perfect example on how to iterate on a sequel without deviating from what made the series so great in the first place. Simply put, it's an approachable racing game that anyone, including their grandma, can play, and that might be the reason why so many people love this game. Moving on, I decided I'd also pay a visit to my old friend Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Being the third entry in the Smash Bros. Series, Brawl took on more of a casual approach compared to its predecessors. Brawl was also the first game in the Smash Bros. Series to introduce online play. If I remember correctly, it didn't work half the time, so I was curious to see if that was still the case in 2024. After you're done logging in, you're presented with two options: play with friends or play with randoms across the globe. The online mode here feels very basic in comparison to other games in this list, as you can only choose between free-for-all or teaming up with a friend for a 2v2 match. But before we dive into online, let me first set the scene. It's a Saturday morning, birds are chirping outside, coffee is brewing, and I've spent the past 30 minutes going completely insane listening to the same melody over and over again. After what felt like an eternity, a random dude finally joined my session, giving ya boy the opportunity to revisit this old peanut. Since everyone and their uncle has played Smash before, I don't think I need to explain it in too much detail, but if you've been living under a rock for the past 2 decades, here's a TLDR. Before every match starts, the player selects from one of 37 unlockable characters, with over 40 stages to choose from. I like to describe Smash Bros. As easy to pick up and play, but hard to master. It's an approachable fighting game that accommodates all players, but offers a ton of depth to its gameplay. Unpopular opinion, but I really dig the stages in Brawl. There's a ton of variety here. If you want something more traditional, the stage Final Destination is a classic. If you crave something more inventive, both Delphona Plaza and the Ice Climber stage are great choices to keep things interesting. I also like how it brought back some of the best stages from the previous Smash Bros. Games. Always a nice touch. So, what is it like to play Smash Bros. Online on the Wii 17 years later? Well, I'll just be blunt and say it's kinda shitty. Within the first 30 seconds of playing, I noticed that something felt off with the controls. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. I unplugged my controller and reconnected it to see if that would fix it, and nope. Turns out that the game has an unhealthy amount of input delay. Every action, from simply moving across the stage to performing an attack, is delayed by a millisecond. As a result, the controls don't feel nearly as fluid or as responsive. It's one thing to have the frame rate come to a complete standstill mid-game, but adding a hefty amount of input delay just makes the experience nearly unplayable. Mario Kart on the Wii was released the same year as Brawl, had double the player count, and was a lot more stable in comparison. Yeah, I understand that comparison is like apples to bananas, but it's still not an excuse to release an online mode in this much of a broken state. I also couldn't help but notice that even with its clear latency problems, Brawl's gameplay feels way slower than I remembered. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to jump back into Melee and see how the two stack up against each other. From what I could tell, Melee's combat system feels a lot more responsive and tight. The faster pace also adds more of a reliance on understanding each character's strength and knowing when and how to pull off combos with them. In comparison, Brawl's combat doesn't feel nearly as responsive. It lacks that sense of impact one would come to expect with a Smash Bros. Game. That's not to say that the gameplay in Brawl is awful because of it, rather it really boils down to whatever your personal preference is. Moving back on the topic of online, it's also very unstable when you include more than 2 players in a match. The footage that I captured for this video doesn't do it justice, but it's not uncommon for the frame rate to take a dump mid-session. From what I read online, private matches with friends are much more stable and aren't as bad in comparison to playing with randoms over the internet. Since I don't have any friends on the Wii, I couldn't confirm that, so let me know in the comments down below if that's true or not. In my limited experience with this game, it appears that most of the community sticks to adding each other beforehand, then creating a private match versus hopping into matchmaking. So if you're interested in playing this game again, I'll leave a link in the description to a forum where people share their friend codes with each other. It's also worth noting that my negative experience is not WIIMFC's fault, as the online mode in Brawl has always been janky. I respect the fact that despite its negative reception, the team went out of their way to make it playable once again, which isn't an easy feat. So big ups to the team and thank you for reviving this game once again. Even if it's not the most competitive or beloved game in the franchise, Brawl is still a hoot and holler with a few of your good buddies. I also highly recommend checking out this mod called Project M Pad Edition, as it's incredibly goofy. Moving on, we have the Conduit. Originally released as an exclusive on the Wii, it was one of the only first-person shooters built from the ground up for the platform. First-person shooters weren't nearly as common on the Wii in comparison to its 360 and PlayStation 3 counterparts. So when it released back in 2009, a lot of Wii owners were expecting it to be the Wii's Halo killer. Yeah, I don't know about that. Anyhow, both the Conduit 1 and 2 are supported by WIIMFC, and judging by the website stats, there still is a small community of players that play this on the odd weekend. So I hopped on a Friday night and managed to find 5 others online, allowing myself to experience it for the very first time. The Conduit is best described as the Wii's Halo. There isn't any credit class, kill streaks, perks, none of that bullshit. Instead, you pick up weapons across the map and have to rely on your skill to back you up. One unique feature that the Conduit offers is how before each match starts, you vote on the game's rules. For an example, I played a game of free-for-all with a modifier that changed it into a last man standing type of mode, while in another match it has playing a mode that resembled Oddball from the Halo series. It adds a fun twist to every match, and I wish more games would experiment with this feature. So what is it like to play? The Conduit doesn't reinvent the wheel when it comes to gameplay, nor does it do anything necessarily different compared to its competition. It's your standard run-of-the-mill 2000s shooter. The Conduit differs from other first-person shooters in how it forces you to only use motion controls, as a classic controller is not supported here. I kinda dig this. Playing any shooter with the Wiimote gives it a completely different feeling altogether versus playing it on something like a 360 controller. The game's pacing is a lot slower compared to something like Call of Duty 4 Reflex, which means you have more time to think and respond without it always feeling like someone is breathing over your shoulder. The only real issue I had with this setup is that it's very inconsistent. It doesn't take much for the Wiimote to lose its tracking. This puts you at a massive disadvantage, since you really can't get a kill when your character is staring at a wall. Weapons, on the other hand, are enjoyable to use and have a nice amount of variety to them. You got your good old Spaz 12, MP5K, a plasma machine gun, and this gross-ass alien sniper rifle. Moving on the maps, and all I can say is that they're okay. Most of them boil down to running through endless amount of hallways, which leads into a room, you get into a gunfight, rinse and repeat. It's not that they're poorly designed, but rather just uninspired. One cool detail that I did notice was on the map called Bunkers. The music that plays in the background instantly reminded me of the original Fear. If there was one game that deserves a remaster, it's definitely Fear. If I had to choose one map that I liked, I'd say I enjoyed the one called The Streets. It's one of the only levels in the game that takes place outdoors, offers multiple pathways to approach it, while not feeling nearly as narrow or as tight in comparison to other maps that I played on. It's also worth mentioning just how well the game's graphics have aged. You can tell that High Voltage, the developers behind this game, pushed the hardware to its limits here. From its rather impressive lighting system to the small details, such as having the environment reflect off a rifle's scope, goes to show just how powerful the Wii is in the right hands. The developers even went on record to say that they wanted the visuals to be on par with both the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. I'd say they got very close to that feat. The Conduit might not have been the most awe-inspiring shooter on the platform, but not for nothing, it's still a fun experience. I like to revisit its sequel in the future, as I've heard it's much better than the original. Anyways, if you want to go revisit this game, I highly recommend checking it out. Now, not every game uses a Nintendo Wi-Fi online service, as a few titles ended up creating their own servers hosted by their respective publisher. This made it much more difficult to reverse engineer since they weren't reliant on Nintendo's infrastructure. For an example, last year, Activision, without warning, decided to shut down all of the Call of Duty Wii online servers. This also meant that modes like Combat Training and Black Ops 1 are no longer playable anymore. I'm still salty about that. Goldeneye was another game that the publisher had shut down prior to 2023, but unlike Call of Duty, it's been recently revived and it's fully playable once again. Goldeneye on the Wii was somewhat controversial back in the day. Leading up to its announcement, there was a rumor of a Goldeneye remaster. That, of course, ended up being cancelled. If you'd like to learn more about that, I did a video recently covering it in more detail. Anyways, fast forward to E3 2010, and Activision announces that Goldeneye is back. The beloved classic that forever changed the first-person shooter genre is being built from the ground up as a Call of Duty clone. Goldeneye on the Wii is a mixed bag depending on who you ask. Some found it to be a competent first-person shooter that takes full advantage of the Wii's hardware, while others found it to be a complete disgrace to the original 1997 game. I remember renting this game the day it came out at Blockbuster and ended up ditching it in favor of Black Ops 1. Now, 14 years later, I think it's time to give it another shot and see what I missed out on. So let's address the elephant in the room first. Goldeneye on the Wii borrows a lot from the Call of Duty series in comparison to the original from 1997. You got things like create a class, perks, progression systems, all that good stuff. The design isn't exactly groundbreaking, but honestly, most multiplayer games from that time were following the same trend. But none of that stuff matters so as long as the game is fun to play. Goldeneye Wii offers about 25 different weapons and attachments to choose from. A lot of the guns are ripped straight out of the original game, such as the P99, MP5, and of course the P90. You also have around 10 different multiplayer maps to choose from, all of which have a very old school type feeling to them. It's refreshing to go back to when multiplayer maps weren't always following the traditional 3-lane highway design. I appreciate how the designers put a heavier emphasis on verticality, like in the map Jungle for an example. It kinda reminded me a lot of the good old days of playing Nightfire on the GameCube. Simply put, they're not too small to where it becomes a sweat fest, nor are they too big where it becomes incredibly boring. Wasteland. So, what is it like to play Goldeneye on the Wii? Well, not for nothing, it's actually quite fun. The combat is approachable and easy to pick up and play for anyone who's played a modern first-person shooter before. It doesn't do anything particularly different compared to other shooters. It stays in its lane and focuses on feeling tight and responsive. Some might call it uninspired, but I think the team at Eurocom pulled it off well, all things considered. And as the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If I had to kick it in the can, I would say that using the motion controls is kinda clunky. Maybe it was due to where I placed my sensor bar, but I didn't find it nearly as responsive versus using the classic controller. I don't blame the developers on this one since the Wiimote never really worked well to begin with first-person shooters. I'm sure some people would argue that the motion controls adds to the experience, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. Moving on, let's talk about the community surrounding Goldeneye Wii. Since its inception back in 2020, the Discord community has grown to around 1,500 members, with most of the player base coming together on the odd weekend. I logged in a few times during the week and only managed to find one other player by the name Jam, so it's hard to say if the player base is still active or almost dead nowadays. One cool feature that the Revival team has implemented is the ability to import custom created maps into the game. I played on one called Three Kings. The best way I can describe this one is that it's like a piece of grass sitting above the universe with a random tree thrown in for good measure. It kind of felt like the designer took inspiration from the ending of Majora's Mask, where you walk towards that tree and decide to make a map out of it. Guns are also disabled by default on this map too. Instead, everyone resorts to bitch slapping each other. According to JCash, a member of both the Goldeneye Discord as well as my YouTube channel, the team is looking at adding new custom maps into the game soon, which is pretty cool if you ask me. Although I didn't get to spend more time with Goldeneye, I'm glad I gave it a second chance. A lot of its fumblings, at least in my opinion, was caused by Activision trying to market it as a nostalgia trip to the original fanbase. I believe that if the game had carved out its own distinct identity instead of borrowing so heavily from the Call of Duty series, it could have gained a lot more respect from its audience. Anyhow, I strongly recommend giving this game a try. I'll leave a link to their Discord in the description down below. Now, one of the coolest aspects of the Wii's Online is its rather quirky service known as Wii Connect 24. Originally designed as a way to keep the console always connected to the internet while in sleep mode, Wii Connect 24 offers the player a handful of useful and experimental channels. Stuff like being able to check the local forecast, reviewing the latest news, as well as being able to send messages to other Wiis using the message board. Now, Nintendo did shut down this service way back in June of 2013, but not for long, as a team by the name Wiilink has successfully brought it back from the dead, making it fully accessible in 2024. So what better way to end this video off than exploring a few of these forgotten channels, starting with the news channel. If you haven't already guessed, based on its name, it's a channel that pulls both the local and international news. There's a few categories they can choose from, like business, science, technology, national news, yada yada yada. I stumbled upon an article about how this crypto millionaire purchased a quote-unquote art piece that consisted of a banana stuck to a wall using duct tape for $6.5 million. According to the article, the exhibit attracted so much attention that the gallery had to withdraw it from the general public. Justin's son, the dude who paid $6.5 million for the banana, ate the banana right after the purchase and had this to say: "It tastes much better than other bananas. Indeed, quite good." In comparison, Justin could have purchased 13 Rolls-Royce Phantoms with some change left over for the same price he paid for a single banana and a strip of duct tape. What a guy. Anyways, one feature I thought was really neat is how there's a Google Earth-like globe that you can move around using the Wiimote. So let's say you wanted to see what was going on in Japan for an example. Instead of manually searching through a text box, you can simply drag the globe to where the country is on the map. It's a creative way to see what's going on in the world, and I wish more applications would take this approach. Next up, we have photo prints. This one was pretty cool. This channel allows you to create photo collages from screenshots taken in-game and have them printed out onto a physical canvas. Since the service is no longer functional, it doesn't do anything when you make an order, but I thought this one was pretty quirky nonetheless. It's like one of those Kodak kiosks you would see at Walmart transformed into an app onto your Wii. Next up, we have what's called the Wii Room. This one is kinda nutty. It was originally a Japanese exclusive channel that did a lot of things. You could use it to purchase in-game items, to dress up your Mii, watch videos of people making Pokemon-inspired dishes, or you can simply hop into a room and watch some of the user-generated content.
To paint time with Homebrew Howard. I think that's good.
One of the coolest aspects of the Wiilink service is in its Wiilink Originals. This is a community of content creators that make videos for the service. You have this one creator by the name Homebrew T, who makes videos covering everything Wii homebrew related. There's this dope-ass music channel by the name Sound Chambers, which is kinda like the Wii's version of MTV. I love how their style is reminiscent of the older days of YouTube, a bygone era filled with people making videos simply because they're passionate about creating versus trying to make a quick buck. Another cool feature of the Wii Room is how you can have your own apartment. You can watch TV or summon guests to keep you company. This one dude that I summoned went on about fixing a Windows XP computer, then it took me to a link of a video of some lady printing stamps on a bunch of random shit. Anyways, I recommend checking out Wii Room if you get the chance. Wiilink also supports a handful of homebrew apps as well. One of them is called ReTube. Now, ReTube is supported by an application called WIIMFC, which is a media player that can play and stream videos directly to the console. The application itself is pretty straightforward. You can sort through video categories, watch what's popping up on YouTube, or simply search to whatever your heart's content. All the videos default to what I believe is 480p. This inspired me to take a trip down memory lane and revisit some of the OG YouTube videos that I would watch as a kid.
Sup, bitches? It's Chad Warden here.
I don't think I'd use this app that often, but it's still pretty damn cool nonetheless.
I ain't talking about that Wii shit.
Now, there's a few other channels that aren't too exciting, but worth mentioning at least. There's a forecast channel that simply displays the weather. You got one called Everybody Votes, where people can ask questions and people can vote on whether they agree with it or not. A channel dedicated to watching game trailers, guides, and older Nintendo content. Then you have this cool channel called Check Out My Mii, where users can submit their Wii creations into a pool of other user-generated Miis. I came across Strong Sad from Homestar Runner, and of course Michael Jackson. Now, there's also the Food Channel, which allows people in North America to order Domino's Pizza directly from their Wii. Despite my best efforts and the helpful support from the Wiilink team, I simply couldn't get it to run properly in time for this video. I do plan on making a video showcasing Windows XP running on a Nintendo Wii, so who knows? Maybe I'll get hungry and try it once again. I guess time will tell. But yeah, what else is there to say? Big shout out to the Wiilink team for reviving these channels. Even though they weren't the most significant part of the Wii's history, it's still pretty cool to be able to check them out in 2024. And that was exploring the Wii's Online in 2024. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I have a few other projects in the works right now, with a plan to release one more, hopefully before the end of the year. More details on that once it's ready. But if you enjoy this style of content, please consider leaving a like or even a subscription. It's greatly appreciated. Anyways, until next time fellas, peace.